Hey guys, Sadi from Akla Financial Consultancy here, and in today's video, we'll be discussing on how to properly complete a Form W-4 employee withholding certificate. Oftentimes, you'll have to complete this certificate if you're starting a new job or you want to update your paycheck withholding. So, let's get started. Step one's pretty straightforward. You're going to simply enter your personal information, first and last name, address, and your filing status. This lets your employer know how you're filing and what your standard deduction will be if you decide to take that route and not itemize. So in this case, we have John Doe, address 123 ABC Way, city, town, and zip code, New York, New York, 12345. And we selected the married file joint status. Now, step two, multiple jobs or your spouse works. So you have to complete this step if you have another job, other sources of income, and or your spouse or significant other works. Oftentimes, I see people always complete this form incorrectly because they never account for their spouse's income. They assume if they just enter zero, that the withholding amount will be appropriate. That's not the case. You need to consider your spouse's income only because your job will not know that and they won't know how much to withhold. Income tax is marginal, meaning as you earn more income, you're bumped to a higher bracket, ultimately resulting in a higher effective tax rate. So if you earn 50,000 and your spouse earns 250,000, your employer will not know what effective tax rate you are really in because they're only accounting for the 50,000 they're paying for you. So you have to complete step two if you have a job, if you have a spouse that works, and you have three options to do this. The IRS has a calculator that you can use on their website right here as provided. This is for the most accurate withholding. It's pretty straightforward for people that do not want to do the calculations themselves. Step two, you can use the multiple jobs worksheet on page 3 of the W-4, which we will go over shortly. And option three, if there's only two jobs in total and the pay at the lower paying job is more than half of the pay at the higher paying job, you can select this box and make sure your spouse does that as well on his W-4. For the sakes of this video, we'll be going over the worksheet and how to properly fill that out. But now let's move to step three and we'll jump back to the worksheet. So if your income, if you're filing single, would be 200,000 or less, or $400,000 or less if married filed jointly, you multiply the number of qualifying children by $2,000. They say this because if you earn more than 200,000 or 400 if you're married filed jointly, the child tax credit disappears and you don't qualify for it. So if you earn more than this amount, you would leave this blank or enter zero. But if you're earning this amount or less, depending on the filing status, you'd enter this here. So assuming John Doe is married and earns 300,000 between him and his spouse, and he has two children, we would enter 4,000 here. 2,000 times two, $4,000. Now, if you have children over the age of 17 or a qualifying dependent that you're claiming and they don't qualify as your child under the age of 17, like your parent, for example, or a cousin, you would enter $500 multiplied by the amount of people that you are claiming. So let's just assume I take care of my mom. Obviously, she's over the age of 17. I would multiply $500 by one, and I would be at 500. Then you would simply add these two amounts together, and now you just told your employer that you qualify for credits in the amount of $4,500. So please account for this when you're calculating how much to withhold from my paycheck. Now, step four, other income not from jobs. So if you want tax withheld from other income you expect this year that won't have withholding like dividends, interest, or retirement income, you'd enter this amount here. So assuming my effective tax rate is 20% and I expect to earn 10,000 in dividends, I will ask to withhold $2,000. Now, step 4B, deductions. Only complete this if you know you're itemizing your deductions. This is because you're going to let your employer know that you're not taking the standard deduction amount and your itemized deductions are much larger. Well, can you itemize mortgage interest, state and local taxes up to $10,000 currently, gifts to charity, and gambling losses? So if the sum of these deductions are more than the standard deduction, we're going to take the itemized route and we enter that here. So assuming I pay 20,000 in mortgage interest, $10,000 in state and local taxes, and I gift 5,000 to charity, I would have entered $35,000. This lets my employer know that I'm itemizing, and please consider this amount instead of the standard deduction amount, which is about 28, 29,000 for married file joint taxpayers. And then step 4C, extra withholding. Enter any additional tax you want withheld from each pay period. So this is the biggest mistake I see people make. Oftentimes they complete the W-4, not accounting for their spouse's income. Again, like I said, taxes are marginal, and as you earn more income, your effective tax rate goes up. So we need to account for this when completing the W-4 because your employer will assume this is your only source of income, and they'll apply your effective tax rate much lower than what it really should be. I see this mistake all the time, especially during tax season when people come to me and they're doing their tax return, they're saying, "Hey, why do I owe so much money? I paid so much in tax already. I'm really upset. I claimed single zero. I thought I did everything right." Well, you did the first portion correctly, but you didn't account for your spouse's income. And again, like I said, taxes are marginal. So as you earn more income, your effective tax rate goes higher. But your employer will not know to apply this higher effective tax rate if you don't let them know that you have other sources of income in the household. How do you figure out the extra withholding? We'd use the worksheet or the IRS calculator. But let's use the worksheet for the sake of this video. So in this example, I'm going to assume I earn $250,000 and my wife earns $50,000. So how do I know how much to withhold extra? I would follow the worksheet and I would be applied right here. So for the higher paying job, which I said is 250,000, we're in this box. And then assuming my spouse earns 50,000, we'd go to this box. So we'd line this up and it's going to tell me I need to withhold an extra $11,100 a year in federal income tax. So this will be completed on line 4C. Now you have to divide this amount by the amount per pay period. If you just enter this amount by 4C, you're telling your job to withhold $11,100 every single paycheck. We don't want that. So assuming I get paid bi-weekly, and there's 52 weeks in a year, I would take 11,100 and divide that by 26. So let's see that amount. So I need to withhold an extra $426.92 per pay period. For the sake of this amount, I will enter $427. So I would simply go back up to line 4C and enter 427. And lastly, you just sign and date the bottom, and that is how you properly complete a Form W-4. For more videos like this, please like and subscribe. I will be dropping educational accounting content every single week. And for any questions, please drop it in the comments. Thank you. Have a good one.